Hello all, welcome to TechGig webinar. The topic for today's webinar is Innovation in Financial Technology. We are delighted to have Mr. Shankar Kambhampati, Senior Vice President and CTO at Polaris Financial Technologies Limited, as expert speaker today. Mr. Shankar has 21 years of enormous experience in architecture, design, development and management for a number of software projects executed globally. Currently, Mr. Shankar is working as the Chief Technology Officer of the Investment Banking Unit of Polaris Software Labs and works out the Capital and Investing Banking Super Specialty Center of Polaris in Hyderabad. Gentlemen, the presentation will continue for next 45 minutes and you can ask your questions by typing in the chat pane available. So without further delay, I request Mr. Shankar to continue with the session.
Are you able to hear me? Thank you, Varsha. Are you able to hear me?
Your voice is coming
I'm assuming
fine.
that's an S. So with that, thank you. Thank you, Keshav. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Shankar Kambhampati and Varsha gave a very nice introduction. Thank you for that. I'm right now conducting this from New York. I'm here meeting customers. And thinking and talking about the same things that I also intend to cover in the 45 minutes. This is a space that has been changing substantially in the last two years, and I would like to share my thought process and in the first 45 minutes, and in the subsequent 30 minutes we can get into Q&A, and I would like to hear from you on your thoughts or any questions you have, and to the extent I can answer, I will. Now, here's the interesting thing. We live in great times where everything is changing. So, in many cases, your thought process may be equally good or even better than my thought process. So, that's a little bit of a disclaimer. So, having said that, a little more on where I come from and what I do. This is meant to do two things. One, in the next 2-3 minutes, I see more people joining, so giving them time to join. So that's one. And secondly, for you to also get a sense of what I'm doing and why I want to cover this. Like Varsha said, I operate out of our Hyderabad center of Polaris, and we call it Capital. So very, very apt for the financial technology piece we do. This is a center of excellence dedicated to the capital market financial technology research. So we get deep into the financial aspects, the banking, financial services, insurance domains. Now, apart from being the CTO, I also drive a core team of senior architects and designers, typically senior people, 10+ years experience, and we operate on consulting basis for internal as well as external customers, and we specialize in a number of technologies, Java, .NET, and all the database technologies and all that. But more important than all that, we work on enterprise architecture definition, solution architecture definition. We do architecture design reviews. We research current and upcoming trends. So I have a team of passionate architects who continuously monitor what's going on, and they develop POCs and white papers and so on and so forth. So that is the group I drive, and as you most probably know, Polaris is essentially a financial technology company, and so most of our business comes from banking and financial services. So we spend a lot of time thinking, researching, talking to customers, see where the market goes, and so on and so forth. So with that as a broad context, so let me get into the topic of the day, innovation in financial technology. And below that you see a byline, what the FT engine rooms must do. So I'm going to be introducing some terminology here to make the whole thing interesting, and this is also based on the workshops, seminars, conferences I've conducted in US, UK, Australia. So it is taking into account all that. This is a term that I have been hearing regularly, and so I have done my little bit of innovation. Engine room is what I have been hearing. I've added the FT to it and sort of innovated around the word itself and called it FT engine room. Very shortly, I'll explain to you what this is all about and what I mean by all this. Now, you will need to pardon me for a little bit of a noise in the background. I'm sitting in a building next to the New York light rail, so you will occasionally see an announcement, hear an announcement, and some train noise in the background. So, so my apologies for that. So, all right. Now, let me begin with a story. Let's make this interesting. Okay. I will take this analogy of a ship, which is sailing through the waters from one shore to the other shore. The ship is like an organization. And just as ships run into storms, heavy weather, all kinds of things like what Titanic got and hit an iceberg. So just like that, organizations also run into rough weather. Now here's where I'll bring in the context of banking and financial services. 2009 was the year, 2008, 2009 was the year when we saw great economic turbulence. So let's take this analogy from the sailing, from the ocean, from the ships. So if you were to take an analogy and say what happened in 2008, 2009 is like a storm in the economic waters, then we saw lots of these ships called organizations getting hit by the storm. Some of them survived, many of them survived, some of them did not make it, some of them went to different destinations. So I want to take that analogy and basically say that we are talking about the ship that we refer to as an organization sailing in a marketplace, which is the ocean. And once in a while you see this turbulence, storms, like what we saw in 2008, 2009. So if you take this analogy, now if we apply it to an organization, just as the engine room for a ship drives the ship and also helps it navigate through the difficult storms around the whirlpools, the IT, the Information Technology Department of Banking and Financial Services organization also drives or steers the bank or the financial service organization through difficult times, through the economic turbulence. So let's stay with this analogy and keep coming back to it time and time again, so that we can draw some parallels and also figure out how we want to innovate. Okay, so with that as the context, let me now go to the next slide, which is the agenda slide. I'm now maximizing this screen here, and also now I will move to the next thing. Let me click on the audience view here to make sure that you've got it. Very good. So I can see that there. So what you see here is the agenda for today's discussion. I'll call it a discussion because I'll do this only for 45 minutes, and then let's have a nice interesting discussion. So I would like to begin with setting a context for the innovation and also define the term what financial technology is. So I'll give a high-level description of it, what I mean. Now please note that this is mainly to drive home the concept. Different organizations will define and deal with financial technology in their own way. And when I say different organizations, I'm specifically meaning banking and financial services organizations, and I'll set that context clearly on the next slide. So that's one thing I would like you to keep in mind. Now we'll talk about this FT engine room, and if you remember, I shared the analogy from the ship sailing in the ocean. So the FT engine room is the IT department of a financial services or a bank or an insurance organization. So you could keep that in mind, and we will talk about what the FT engine room is like, and then we will cover 5 innovations. And I have put this purposely here so that you get a view of what are the key things that I would want to talk about, and so you can also get your thought process around that. And then we can get into looking at why innovation is so critical to financial services and banking and insurance organizations. Innovate or perish is the mantra. So we will see why that is the case. With that, I'll go on to the next slide. This is the context slide. Like I said, when I refer to financial technology, I'm referring to application of technology to banking, financial services, and insurance verticals. That's what you see in the top box up there. The other point is that is important, is that financial technology indicates financial plus technology. That is, use of BFSI domain knowledge and technology knowledge to address business problems. Of course, business problems for BFSI domain. So when we talk about financial technology, it is financial plus technology. That's how you can keep in mind. Financial is the domain side. Technology is obviously the technology part of it. So we are talking about applying deep concepts of BFSI domain plus deep concepts of technology to solve the domain problems of BFSI market space. This is what we are saying. And the third point, like I put it on the slide here, every organization has an IT department. And so do banking, financial services, and insurance organizations. And these departments are the heart of the organization. So like engine rooms, going back to that analogy, about the ships, are the heart of the ships. So are these IT departments the heart of the whole business of BFSI space. So IT departments of BFSI organizations will be referred to as FT engine rooms. So I hope you are with me on this, because I want to make sure that we are all on the same page when it comes to what we mean by the FT engine room. We are specifically meaning the IT department of a BFSI organization. And these IT departments, like I said, are instrumental in ensuring that there is competitiveness to the BFSI organization. With that, let me go on to the next slide and talk about the drivers. So let us go back to the ship analogy. What should the captain of the ship, which is the CEO of this BFSI organization, keep in mind when driving the ship through troubled economic waters? Okay. I say troubled because 2008, 2009, whatever happened in the marketplace, we are still seeing the ripples of that storm. So it's not like all the ripples are settled and the ships called BFSI organizations no longer need to worry about that. They still need to worry about some of the side effects. So what we did was we looked at the BFSI space and abstracted the key drivers that an IT department needs to be kept in mind and therefore needs to innovate around. And that is what you see on the slide here. Essentially 4 key drivers that a CEO of a or a CIO of a bank, a financial service organization, or an insurance organization is today needing to deal with. First is cost reduction. Second is risk management. Third is regulatory compliance. And fourth is customer centricity. So I will go a little bit into each of these, giving examples wherever I can. See, the drivers for innovation vary from bank to bank. Okay, instead of saying bank, financial services, and insurance company all the time, I will use the word from bank from now on, and please take it that I'm referring to the whole BFSI market space, that is any organization which is either in banking, financial services, or insurance. So coming back to my point, the drivers for innovation vary from one bank to another depending on the focus of the high-level management and their business vision. Also, I will go a little slowly because this is a webcast and especially when I'm making some points that I think are interesting, I will go a little slowly so that you can connect with that. Now, common drivers. This is not just for bank, but for that matter, any organization, any vertical, include competition to excel as a business and deliver differentiation in services. This is not just for organizations. These days, individuals also need to be worried on how they're able to differentiate themselves from the rest in the organization. Now, these CIOs also need to worry about advancements in technology, changing customer needs, and responding to market trends. There are many times volatile markets. There are new regulations that are coming in, including mergers and acquisitions. So regardless of what steps organizations take, these four drivers we think are something that today banks need to worry about. So the first one is cost reduction. Banks have to identify areas to cut operating costs and reduce business risk. And they also have to use technology innovatively to ensure proper alignment between business and IT. Now, in the past 6 months, I must have met not less than 15 to 20 CIOs of major banks, not to count the smaller banks and organizations. Invariably, the top of mind concern for all the CIOs and CEOs is cost reduction. This is definitely one thing that is their top of mind concern. So they want to use technology innovatively to reduce costs. So in my discussions with the CIOs, I've heard consolidation of servers. They've asked me, can you help me in consolidation of servers so that I can reduce the total number of servers I need to have to run my business? Or cost reduction through virtualization, grid, or cloud computing. Cloud computing, in my opinion, is coming out of the trough of the Gartner hype cycle. So therefore, we will see increasing adoption. And so CIOs, while they're not jumping excitedly at cloud, are looking at it seriously. So they're saying, can I use this technology innovatively to kind of reduce my costs? Now, some of them are even going a step further and saying, I have a set of vendors, partners, suppliers right now. Can I redo my agreements with them so that I can reduce my cost? So cost reduction is one important driver. Second is risk management. So the storm that came in 2008, 2009, the global financial market crisis, has highlighted the importance of risk management. When we say risk management, it is this business risk, operational risk. So one thing that all CEOs, CIOs have woken up to is that they have to manage their risk much better. And they're looking at technology to see if we can provide them data, tools, early warning signals by which they can mitigate the risks. And can they see a pattern coming because of, let's say, volatility in the stock market? Should they do something if the volatility goes up? I've just taken one parameter here, there are a whole lot of other parameters. So can they do something and therefore manage their risk better? So risk management is the second thing. Third is regulatory compliance. Nowhere do you see regulations creating a greater impact, in my opinion, as much as in the BFSI space in the past 2-3 years. So the Dodd-Frank Act, so that's one in the capital markets, that is going to make all CIOs, CTOs sit and think through all their IT strategies. So that's one. Then the Basel III norms. So a whole lot of regulations have come in. So the CIOs have to put processes and systems in place to ensure compliance with the new regulatory requirements. They have to consolidate and analyze data and report to statutory bodies. So real-time reporting of swap data is something that many banks need to deal with. Then obviously to reduce cost and also to make sure that they're able to provide the regulatory compliance reports in time, they have to make the best use of technology to eliminate manual processes and improve quality of data and timely reporting. If this does not happen, then the regulatory bodies can slap huge fines on them, which has also been happening in some cases. So regulatory compliance, we see, is another very important area that the CEOs of these banks need to deal with. And the last but not the least, like we often say, is customer centricity. Now, this is one area that is, again, not just for banking and financial services. It is across the board. All organizations want a single view of customer so that they can upsell and cross-sell products and services and address operational challenges and take steps such as providing real-time data and access through multiple channels to increase customer reach. So the whole concept of master data management and leveraging master data management, creating a single view of customer, bringing in CRM systems where needed, ensuring that duplication of customer data does not exist in IT applications are all initiatives that these banks are dealing with. So going back to the ship analogy, if we were to say that the captain of the ship, which is the CEO of the organization, needs to keep these disturbances in the ocean in mind and steer his ship in a way that he gets to the other shore, which is the marketplace, and which is top line and bottom line, revenues and profitability, much better than anybody else. Then the question comes on how IT can help. So with this, I will go on to the next slide. Now, a quick check. Keshav, am I audible here? I'm assuming that that's a
yes,
okay.
Mr. Shankar, you're audible.
Thank you. So, so I'm now on the slide 5 where I have titled it as FT engine room response. Once again, engine room is the IT of a bank. Take it that way. And I have called it financial technology engine room just to make that much more attractive in terms of the importance we would need to associate with an IT department in a bank. So here are the 3 things that banks need to deal with. So I will summarize them and then drill down a little bit into the detail. And again, this is based on what I have heard from a number of CIOs and who are defining their IT strategies for the banks. First thing I've seen consistently across all these CIOs is they're saying, buy what you can, build what you must, and outsource the rest. Right? So this is a very, very important and interesting thing, especially for the Indian IT, because there is such a big play of services in there. So the fact that CIOs are placing importance to buy is something that needs to be kept in mind. The second point is use architecture as a tool to ensure that IT delivers business outcomes. So architecture is increasingly becoming strategic. Well, that is job security to me and the architects and my team. That's one thing. But the more important point is that there is an opportunity here for IT services companies to engage with customers at the higher end of the value chain through architecture initiatives. So this is a very interesting opportunity, and we are seeing quite a bit of traction in that space. So the use of using architecture as a tool to ensure that IT delivers business outcomes is the second point. And the third is, this is interesting, leverage technology both within and outside the enterprise. Typically, financial services companies were very, very closed in terms of where their apps would be deployed, where their data would be, and so on and so forth. But I think we are seeing a shift in the mindset of many of the decision makers in these banks. They are willing to look at IT applications being deployed both within the bank and outside the bank. So let me go through each of these points in a little more detail. I will not spend too much of time, but I just want to make a few key messages. One is related to the first one, which is buy what you can, build what you must, and outsource the rest. IT functions are increasingly expected to be more thrifty, that is cost saving. They have to be cost saving. So technology for technology's sake is clearly a no-no. That much is very evident. What the customers are saying is, we want to look at products if one exists, which meets our requirements by and large, and customize them. That would be our first preference. This is something that I'm seeing across the board. So they're saying, if there is a product that is available, let's look at the product, because we can buy and customize it. It is shorter time to market, and plus it is tested, best practices there. So all that. So that is their one thing that they're looking at. And they're also saying that we build custom solutions only when a product cannot meet requirements or the ROI is not justified. So we may get time to market, lesser time to market through a product implementation, but it may turn out that the product is so expensive that the ROI doesn't exist. So in such a case, they would want to look at having a application built ground up. Even when building custom solutions, the emphasis clearly is on ensuring that the total cost of ownership is low. So many customers are looking at open source. This is not new. This has been around for 5-6 years now, but I think I'm seeing big players moving to open source in a big way and building their entire platform based on open source, which was not the case 3-4 years back, but we are seeing that now. So that is the first point, which is buy what you can, build what you must, and then outsource the rest. So there are scenarios where you have to build an app, but building in-house is expensive. You have to bring down the total cost of ownership, which is both development and support. So let's outsource that piece. Is the strategy that IT units are taking, IT departments are taking. A quick check of the time to make sure we have enough time for everything. Okay, good. Then the second point is use architecture as a tool. Now, solution engineering calls for understanding of IT through the eyes of the bankers, traders, brokers, and research analysts. This is where architects add immense value. Now, in the Indian context, I've had a certain experience I want to share. It is very difficult to typically find very good technical people being very good in domain, and very good domain people, that is the business analysts, being also very good in technology. It is a rare thing in the Indian context, but it is changing now, and I see that in Polaris. There is substantial emphasis on technology people going very deep in domain, and in many ways that has been a differentiator for us. So this whole thing of solutioning, which is not just looking at it from a technology perspective, but a holistic view of both the business side, which is the functional side, as well as the technology side, is something that is being done. And then right architecture is beginning to become the basis for scalable and strategic solutions. And what I'm hearing most of the CIOs also talk about is that they want to ensure reuse, so they don't want to go about repeatedly building the same functionality. They want to make sure that reuse, integration, and agility, that these three things are addressed at architecture level, resulting in elegant IT solutions. So I these days when I go and meet customers, invariably I run into an architecture group on the customer side, and some of them are more mature than the others, but invariably all of them have something like an enterprise architecture, something like an IT strategy at least, which can be the starting point towards solutioning for a particular application in that bank. So that's something that we are seeing. So what we are seeing is that banks are saying, we will define a future state architecture. If you don't have one, can you help me do the future state? And therefore, let's make that the basis for any development that we take up. Now, this has been fascinating for all the architects, for me and the architects in my team. We're getting some great opportunities here to do future state for several banks. Okay, and one reason for sharing that thought is that Indian IT also has matured to a point where it's not just we are able to engage with customers effectively in their multi-million-dollar strategies, for their whole enterprise. So that's an interesting point for all of us, I think. Now, the third point is leverage technology, both within and outside the enterprise. So the advent of cloud computing is raising interesting possibilities around ownership and management of the entire IT infrastructure. I ran into one of the CIOs the other day, and he made a very interesting point. He said, Shankar, most of the work we do, except for these 5-6 apps, is not a differentiator for us. Can you help in actually moving all this, take all this headache off me, put it on some cloud platform? You give me a per transaction cost, and you as an organization take care of the headache of upgrading the app, to making sure that the regulatory related areas are addressed, and so on and so forth. So there are customers who, and their banks there, which are looking at cloud computing very keenly for that. So they're exploring the suitability of adopting cloud computing and also solutions to scale infrastructure and applications. So this whole problem of infrastructure sizing and continuous upgrade is an expensive affair. So that is the area where CIOs are saying, can I leverage cloud computing? And they're of course considering virtualization technologies, because many of the servers in banks are typically run at a 20% or even less of utilization. So there are all those servers for which enormous amount of money has been spent but used very little. So they want to increase the amount of usability of these servers through virtualization. So these are the three things that we are seeing. Now with this as the basic thing, now let me get into the meat of the whole discussion, which is the innovation in this FT engine room. Once again, just to stay connected with the ship analogy, this is the IT department of a bank. So before we jump into the different areas where we can innovate, let us look at where innovation can happen. So innovation could be, when I say innovation could be innovation in a bank, could be experimenting with new tools and technologies and using them in a different way to reduce cost, to better manage risk, and all the good things that we talked about. Now, migrating to other platforms or infrastructure. So this could be cloud, this could be virtualization, whatever. It could be outsourcing internal projects. So the innovation is not so much at a technology level as much as how technology is leveraged globally. So that is one area. And recruiting consultants in place of permanent staff and reusing legacy applications. So I will not spend too much time on recruiting consultants in place of permanent staff, because consultants typically nowadays are not one-off consultants, but actually they come from the outsourcing partner. So that is a well-known thing. But reusing legacy applications is, I think, now an old statement, meaning this was a very, very hot thing and about 5 years back, and people were talking a lot about it. Now it is hygiene factor. So if you have a COBOL application and a mainframe that works very well, it is very unlikely that you will run into a CIO who would say, no, I want to rebuild all that on Java platform, even if it costed me $5 million. First of all, the CIO does not have that extra $5 million he needs. Secondly, don't fix what I broke is the way they are looking at it. So they want to see how they can modernize it, basically service enable it, use it as part of the newer infrastructure. So that's the innovation agenda as I would like to look at it. The other thing I want to mention is a trend that we are seeing. What we are seeing is that we have in many of these banks innovation groups. So they're calling it by various names. Some people call this enterprise architecture groups. Some people call it a technology group. Whatever be the name, they are forming these innovation groups to drive innovation. So there is somebody that we are seeing in all these banks who is actually playing around and seeing how they can optimize their work. So some kind of a specialized centers of excellence have become the focus area. And to that extent, if you are working for an outsourcing partner, they're asking you as well, what can you bring to the table as a center of excellence? So one trend that we are clearly seeing in terms of creating a factory model for innovation is creating an innovation group within either the bank or the outsourcing partner as part of its own DNA. It's very critical. So there are always questions that are asked whenever there is a specialized group. I run into it sometimes myself, because I have a very specialized team of architects, and so the question is it worth the cost? Do you have ROI? The usual questions that any specialized group in any enterprise across vertical spaces. But interestingly enough, what we are seeing is that all these banks are clearly realizing that the cost of having such groups is much less than the benefits that you will get from such kind of groups, because businesses need to be very agile. There could be a regulation related change or a new product that a bank needs to offer. It is too late for somebody to go to the drawing board, then put together a task group, try and come up with something. They need to have the basic engine with innovation as part of the DNA. So that is one thing that we are seeing clearly. So with that trend, now let us look at the innovations that we are seeing in the FT engine room. Keep in mind the backdrop of the BFSI market space. 2008, 2009, all this crisis happened. The ripples have not died down yet. We are still seeing some of that, and the 4 drivers that I talked about earlier on: cost reduction, risk mitigation, risk management, all that. So please keep that in mind. Now let us look at the 5 different innovations that we see in the FT engine room. First one is multi-channel support. We are clearly seeing the advent of mobile, and I'll get into that in a minute. Then legacy reuse and process automation. Again, this is to make sure that the investments done in the past are protected. So that's one. Third is data management and analytics. Data is becoming very key to the strategies that these banks are adopting. So that's that. That's about data management. Fourth is event detection and processing. So events happen in the marketplace. So stock market volatility changes. So people have to respond very, very quickly so that they don't lose heavily on the investments they do, either on behalf of the bank or on behalf of their customers. So the event detection and processing. and end-to-end integration and low latency. Low latency is something that we are seeing quite a bit of an innovation happening on. So now let me drill down into these 5 areas. The first one is this multi-channel support. Mobile technologies have opened up new business opportunities for banks and financial services firms. See, every bank needs to provide access through the mobile channel. Even in India, we see all banks supporting the mobile channel. In fact, in many cases, I think India is way ahead of what some of the other countries are in terms of how mobile penetration has happened. So, mobile devices have opened up endless possibilities. So that is one. So now the other point that I want to mention, I want to make sure I don't forget this as an example. There is a bank that I talked to in some other part of the world, which has been investing in mobile for their workforce using one particular mobile technology. I'll not go into that. As a consequence of this initiative, the CIO told me that they experience better staff productivity and increased job satisfaction. See, most of the time there is this charm around mobile, right? And people show off with their mobile devices, and banks do that too. But I'm beginning to see CIOs who say, I'm actually benefiting from this. This is the way I am getting better productivity and job satisfaction, which I think is the first sign of maturing mobile space. Now, the other thing is mobiles is one part of it. So you have the iPhones, but the tablets have kind of become genuine and powerful alternative channel. So the whole iPad and the Android tablets is opening up very, very new possibilities in BFSI space. It is helping in increased customer reach and lowering operating costs through self-service options. In fact, I'm beginning to see many customers who say, I want my senior management to be able to see the dashboard right away on their iPad in first thing in the morning. So while they come down to work. So it is becoming very, very important to support mobile, and therefore a lot of innovation is happening around multi-channel support. One case in point is the emergence of HTML5, the increased traction in HTML5. So there's so many user interface technologies, and in my opinion, user interface technologies has been the area where maximum innovation has happened. This is cutting across verticals. And emergence of HTML5 and increased traction is because if you build your app around HTML5, it will run on all web browsers as well as mobile browsers. So there is quite a bit of focus that has come in on how you will design the presentation layer of your application, for instance, which will support multiple channels. So I just want to show you an example. We did a POC, basically a fund analyzer, which has caught the attention of several customers. And so where the financial analyst can see how a fund for a ultra high net worth individual, how it is performing. So this is the first point, which is the innovation in supporting multi-channel support. Essentially, innovation in the presentation layer technologies and very quick adoption of these is one area I think that is definitely worth mentioning. And in my opinion, this is at the top of the different areas where innovations are happening. Now, let me go to the next, which is legacy reuse and process automation. So, banking and financial services organizations have invested heavily in building and supporting these IT applications in the past, typically legacy mainframe kind. and they are confronted with the problem where business needs are changing every day, and there is continuous pressure from the business side of the bank to the IT to get them to also stay in step in terms of being able to support the new products and the new offerings they want to take to the marketplace. So SOA is actually become mainstream now. There was a time 4 or 5 years back when people would talk about SOA as the new thing. Now it is given, again, another hygiene. For these kind of legacy scenarios, SOA has become an obvious choice. And what CIOs are doing is they are leveraging SOA to align business with IT through reuse of legacy applications. So I actually ran into one of the CIOs in UK, and he said something very interesting. Incidentally, I have written a book on service-oriented architecture. So I gave him a copy of my book, and he was basically telling me, he said, he was asking me, so what do you think of SOA? And I said, look, SOA is all about business. It's not about technology. He said, Shankar, I completely agree with you, but the very interesting thing is, it is very difficult for me as head of an IT department to get my IT team to change their thought process. So I'm using SOA to basically get them to align with my thinking. So this particular CIO is trying to solve his IT problems using SOA, which is essentially more meant to be at a business level, although a whole lot of technology gets talked about regarding SOA. So that's an innovative way by which this customer is doing. So I want to share one example. Several leading insurance service providers globally have been taking up initiatives to replace existing legacy-based claims processing system with product implementations based on SOA. So this is a nice trend, I think. So it's not like everybody wants to go and build all the services themselves. The industry has matured enough for them to basically say that let's go buy these services that are readily available, rather than actually build all services ground up. So Accord compliant services are something that they are willing to look at and buy readily, and bring the whole product implementation into their bag. So that's one very interesting area. Now I would also like to touch on 3 things that are happening parallelly, or I should say in a different dimension, which also will help in legacy reuse and process automation. One is this whole SOA BPM convergence. So BPM journey, the way I see it, started long before SOA became mainstream. Now almost all BPM products are SOA enabled. I think every one of them. And BPM is an integral element of SOA. So that convergence has happened. This is good news because you can now leverage BPM for SOA implementations. And because BPM enables creation, management, and monitoring of business processes within the enterprise, you can have one strategy that will give you both the benefits of reuse, agility, and integration that SOA has to offer, and the whole business process management that a BPM technology or concept would provide. So that's one thing that's happening, and this is also driving improved process automation. Second is cloud computing. Now, I normally take this example of rented apartments versus owned houses. Rented apartments are like cloud infrastructure. So you pay per use. You don't worry about maintaining it. It's somebody else's headache. There is a contract. You pay per use and all that. Whereas if you look at own houses, you get a certain differentiation with it. So for small and medium businesses, cloud is an important thing. And so what these people are trying to do is payroll. For instance, if they have a payroll app, there's no big deal in having all that within their own IT infrastructure. So I'm seeing people who move their payroll applications and all their Innovate apps onto the cloud. In fact, even most of the time, even when you want to actually reduce your cost, you go there. But this is a context of legacy reuse and process automation. So therefore, what they're doing is they're reusing their existing applications, but they're reusing it on a cloud infrastructure. So it's a different dimension I just want to point out to. Third is event-driven architecture. So as technologies advance and markets demand greater and greater reach to the marketplace and quicker ways of making things happen, the event-driven architecture and the advances in it are helping extend SOA, and in that process also bring innovation into the IT infrastructure in many ways. I'll not go into the details on account of time here, because there are just 2 more slides and we can get into discussion mode, and if any of you have any questions we can take there. Now moving on to the next one, the next area of innovation is data management and analytics. Like I was saying earlier on, data is becoming central to the strategy of most of the banks and financial institutions. So how do you do intraday? It could be margining, it could be something else. So this whole thing of being able to manage real-time data, typically in large distributed caches, and use of ETL and BI tools intelligently on data marts, data warehouses, and building data management solutions are becoming very, very key. In many cases, banks have no choice because they have to comply with regulations like Basel III, which I put down there as an example. So they need to do this. They need to focus on it, and therefore we are seeing substantial innovation taking place in the data management and analytics space. Again, if any of you is out there who is very keen to make a career in data warehousing space, I think there is good news there. For the next 2 to 3 years, I see substantial amount of opportunities out there. The next one is event detection and processing. So this whole emergence of complex event processing to be able to recognize patterns in a data stream of some kind. It could be from a stock market, it could be based on any other parameters that are tracked continuously by organizations, and to make real-time decisions based on that is another area of innovation that we are seeing in the IT areas of banks. So integration of a CEP product into banks' IT infrastructure and using that in very unique ways that may be applicable to each bank is one area of innovation that we are clearly seeing there. And now moving on to the next slide, which is related to this whole end-to-end integration with low latency. So STP, for instance, 5-6 years back, STP was, again, like SOA, was being talked about and saying, can we do it, should we do it, what is the cost, all that. But now it's given. You have to have end-to-end integration, otherwise you cannot deal with the tons of data that you need to, that each of the business processes sort of produce, and then the cost involved in carrying them through that different applications from one end to the other is clearly ensuring that all CIOs have strategies for end-to-end integration. And in doing that, they are also saying that we need to do this with very low latency. So something that I have been hearing for a few years now, that low latency is important, but in the last 2 years at least, it has picked up substantial traction. So there is quite a bit of discussion and innovation around in-memory databases like KDB in financial services, and also low latency middleware, TIPCO, STL, 100 microseconds or milliseconds to move data from one end of the pipe to another, all that. So much so that in countries like Australia, they have initiatives at a national level for providing a ultra low latency, high network bandwidth. They call it IRIS, and so they're laying out optical networks to reduce latency. So we think, at least many architects in my team and myself, we feel low latency is one area which is where a lot of innovation will occur in the next few years. So in conclusion, before we turn to the Q&A, is this. There are these trends. So I'll go back to the ship analogy. So there are all these whirlpools in the marketplace, which we call as the ocean, the BFSI marketplace. So we see that those whirlpools need to be addressed: cost reduction, risk management, and so on and so forth. So those whirlpools need to be addressed, and there are many others too, but key ones is what I put there. So the IT in the bank has no choice but to be competitive and innovate. If they don't do that, then the business as a whole will lag behind, which means the bank will lag behind. So innovation is key to the FT engine room, which is, like I said, the IT of a bank, to stay ahead of the competition and to increase the customer reach. The third point in the conclusion that I wanted to make was that enterprises must set up innovation groups. So it is too late in the day to recognize the change in marketplace and then think of bringing in some specialists. The time has come, I think, where banks, when I say banks again, banks, financial services, and insurance companies must have their own groups who continuously create the center of excellence, are in a position to help IT innovate with changing times. So bottom line, I actually want to read this. Bottom line, innovation is essential for survival. If we don't do it, the organization doesn't exist, and therefore our jobs are at jeopardy. Given these conditions, enterprises must innovate and make the best use of technology, or like said, take a final bow, exit. That seems to be the key message that I'm seeing from the marketplace. So these are my thoughts. So we could now, get into a discussion. Any questions you have? I'm bringing up these questions here, and I will go through one by one. Okay. So, right. So I'm looking at questions here. If you have any specific questions, you can ask now. I hope this has been interesting. At least you can make your comments. I hope this does make sense, and it is in line with what you see. If you have a different viewpoint, I would like you to share that too. I will kind of share that for the benefit of everybody.
Yes, the questions are already shared with you.
Okay, I have detached that here, and I 1 minute. Let me. I think I'm okay. I see some questions here, but just a minute. It is my bad here. I think I've not figured out how to get it. This box is very, very small here. Oh, there are a number of questions here. 1 second.
Yeah, if you click on the icon, it is given in the top right corner of questions tab. So it will pop out.
Questions, I've clicked that. Okay.
Now
And
you can make this pop up larger.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry, that was me out there. So the first question from Alkash Ghai. You mentioned domain plus technology for solution design. Can you please highlight on technology perspective what domain people should have? Lovely. I really appreciate this question, because many times when I and my architects work with business analysts, we run into this. See, there are 3 areas where we definitely think business analysts need to have a perspective. The first one is data. See, data is not technology. So if you were to look at a single view of customer, what is the data that represents the single view is something that business analysts must contribute to. In fact, technology guys may be able to deal with it much less. So I think it is critical that data is one area that they should have visibility to. Second is they also need to have a broad understanding of what technologies can do or cannot do. So while the expectation is not that domain guys get very deep into Java or Microsoft or COBOL or whatever it is, at a very, very high level, the domain people need to know what these technologies can do. I'll give you a kind of an analogy. See, I may not know the internals of a new latest TV, like HDMI, 3D, all that. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to be buying a TV for my family, I need to know what my son, what my daughter would be interested in seeing, or to put it better, what only I want them to see. So therefore, I must have a certain awareness on what technologies are there or offered by TV. Right? Same way, the business analysts and the domain people should know what technologies can do for them. Otherwise, they will give a specification and there is a lot of time lost between the business analyst and the architect. Thankfully, I think there is a very good understanding on this aspect. The third one is they need to have two aspects I think are mandatory. The whole thing of requirements capture formally, being able to do use cases which form as a starting point for the technology guys to be able to document the basic flows, the alternate flows, and write functional spec that the technology guys can understand is something that is very, very important. So these are the three things that I definitely think domain people need to have a perspective on related to technology. I hope I've answered that. Now, second is from Ishani Sinha, why is everyone more focused on the iPhone and not BlackBerry? Okay. So there is this thing, right? Boys love gadgets. I want to begin with that. They like to play with, they're always obsessed. And I'm not being gender specific here. So when I say boys, I mean all those people in IT. It includes girls as well these days. So they like to play with the latest thing. And what Steve Jobs did very nicely through the iPhone was to be able to address that use case of being able to quickly get to what you want without having to do too many things. So I think the whole Steve Jobs way of approaching user experience was one reason why iPhone, iPad, all that took off so much. The other is the uncertainty of BlackBerry itself. So it's not that BlackBerry will not be there. That's not my point. My point is where will it go? Given that Microsoft is moving in a certain way, Apple is moving in a certain way, and given that they have big market penetration. Other than using BlackBerry as a phone, what else can I do? So all the new things that we talked about, BlackBerry Playbook, for instance, it did not take off like even Android Galaxy Tab, in my opinion. I can stand corrected on this, but in my view, iPad and Android Galaxy Tab, for example, Samsung's have gone, and for that matter, all Android tablets have done very well. So this is probably one reason why people want to go more for iPhone, and also my son would love to play with it much lesser than with a BlackBerry device. It's surprising how buying decisions are made many times related to mobile devices based on Angry Birds that's played on a device. So I will leave that at that. Then the third question, from Yogesh Pandey. What's the take of banks on clouds and virtualization technologies? How they are excelling themselves in this? So what's the opportunity for clouds in banks and how? So very clearly, like I mentioned earlier on, virtualization is an in thing. CIOs want to improve the utilization of their infrastructure. So using VMware or whatever other virtualization, Hyper-V or whatever it is, they want to make sure that they do that. Now clouds, in my view, like I said earlier on too, CIOs are looking at cloud very seriously. For non-mission critical applications and where data security is not an issue, I think they're looking at it very seriously. So where is the opportunity for us? The opportunity is right there. Look at non-mission critical applications in banks and see if you can offer your products or services to them. And there is a very good chance that they will look at it seriously if you can demonstrate an ROI. Obviously, any buying decision is based on what it means to the top line and bottom line. So I think that's the opportunity. Non-mission critical with a clear demonstration of ROI is where CIOs, I think, will show a lot of interest in. So I hope I've answered that. Then the next one, what about one finance company acquiring another company? This is from Arvind Gurha. What about one finance company acquiring another company and both of them using different tech app? How do you make them decide which one to use considering cost, comfortness of the business users, ROI, etc.? This is the whole mergers and acquisition story, right? When a company merges or acquires another company, there is a whole merger and acquisition aspect that's looked at, and typically we talk about synergy, which is at the business level, right? So what is the synergy in these two companies coming to it, two banks coming together? So the synergy aspect needs to be looked at, and typically when that happens, the technology side also is looked at. So how do you do this? Now, I've been involved in several of these engagements, and definitely it all begins with an exercise on application analysis and application rationalization. So you'll need to look at the 400 apps of Bank A and the, let's say, 450 apps of Bank B, and look at each of them from a business, application, information and infrastructure. Look at it on all four dimensions and then see where the commonality is and where the redundancies are. So there may be one function or a set of functional requirements that are being addressed exactly in the same way or almost in similar way in both the companies, in which case you will need to retire one and go to the other. So there is this whole approach to application rationalization. So retire, re-engineer is something that we talk about all the time, or reuse. So if there is a common platform that you see across all the banks, both the banks, then it makes life that much more easy. Otherwise, I've seen a very interesting way. The guy who acquires decides that his application stays and the applications from the acquired guy go out of the door. So that's meant to be a joke, but sometimes I see decisions, in my opinion, are being done that way. So to answer your question, to be direct, I think the starting point is when a merger and acquisition is planned, definitely a synergy related analysis is done, at which time this is looked at too, but thereafter an application analysis and rationalization engagement of some kind needs to be kicked off, ideally with the CIOs of both the banks who are coming together, and then they can get a third party involved or they can do it themselves. Typically they bring in a third party to ensure that there is less politics out there. So that's the way to define that, in my opinion. Going on to the next one, Yogesh Pandey again. What about CIA in cloud services that is critical in BFSI? I didn't get what he was meaning by CIA in cloud services. So maybe you can elaborate, Yogesh, if you can elaborate that a little bit, then I will connect with that. So let me move on to the next one. Azmat Sharif, some banks have regulation that customer data cannot leave their stores. Hence, they are reluctant to leverage IT infrastructure. How do you think we can address this issue with financial technology? Beautiful. So we have seen this several places, right? I mean, especially the data privacy laws of Europe are very clear that they cannot leave their shores, and they cannot definitely leave the European Union. The data cannot leave that. So we have seen some interesting innovations here. Basically, they have come up with a certain kind of services that we have heard as revelation services. This is one of the names that I've seen. It will reveal the data selectively. So if you're trying to access data of an app from outside the bank's infrastructure, you will need to come up with some kind of an understanding. Let me put that as a protocol. Some kind of an agreement that when that data is needed, I will make a request and you do whatever you need to and give me the final result. Now that final result is something that can come out of that either bank or European Union or whatever. If you don't have that, then obviously it has to be done within the context of the bank. But what I've seen is with the right use of this revelation approaches as well as data masking approaches, it is possible to do most of it within, the data remains within the context of the bank, but the end results are used outside the bank or whatever is the boundary that you draw. So that is one thing I have seen done there. Hope that answered your question. There's a question from Asif Mohammed. Shankar, with respect to HTML5 popularity, how do you justify the ROI for UI modernization scenarios like Adobe Flex? What type of innovation can help in such case? So my take is that Flex will not go away overnight, right? Now, for sure, with Adobe releasing many of these frameworks to open source, it is less expensive in terms of the total cost of ownership. So there is that that thing possible. So what innovations are possible? So my take is that if you could have a migration tool, okay, there are migration tools already, but if you can improve and refine and have an approach, and if you can go to a bank and say, I will take all your Flex screens and your Flex UI, I will convert it to HTML5. These are the benefits you get. That could be one area where you can innovate, and you need to innovate. It's not so straightforward because it will be substantial effort, and the whole innovation element is how do you keep the cost low but yet give the bank a HTML5 kind of an interface. So hopefully that has answered that question. Then moving on to the next one, Amar Kumar Sharma, if we outsource maximum work, aren't we depending more on the other organization, which might cause some unwanted scenario in the future? Absolutely. See, take your own home, right? If you say, I will not cook in my home, I will only outsource, which is order every day, it will cause unpleasant scenarios, especially with the stomach in the Indian context. But jokes apart, the basic point is that no one said that if you have to outsource, you have to outsource all of it. I mean, that is somewhere implied, right? In fact, in many of the strategies I define to customers, I say, don't outsource this piece. Whatever is very close to you, you cannot outsource it. For example, I don't know if you have a child, Amar, you can't outsource the decision making of your child's future to somebody. that will still be your decision. You can obviously outsource the teaching part of it. So you can get a tutor, you can get the coaching, you can do all that, but the decisioning cannot be outsourced. So that's where I think your question is a very good one. So what is it that you can outsource? You cannot outsource all, all the decisioning and strategic kind of scenarios. You can bring in a partner to help you define the strategy, but it should still be in your control, is how I would approach a customer. Another question from Amar Kumar Sharma. How do we make sure that by outsourcing our work will make company profit when we as an organization have capability to do the work? So that's the point, right? Typically people take the cost arbitrage approach. So if the cost of getting it done is much lower than doing it in-house, my take is sooner or later that work will get outsourced. You can try to convince your management in short term to say, okay, this year there are these problems, don't outsource, and they may hear you out. But I think the long-term approach should be that banks, or for that matter any other enterprise, should always convince its managements on keeping the core and strategic part to itself, and also the people within there, just so that they don't lose their jobs and all that. Focus on the strategic side, while all the mundane work of support and development, I think we have to agree that that's the way the world is. Water flows from a high level to low level. Power flows from high potential to low potential. And there's potential difference, it will flow. Same thing with work, right? I mean, somebody gave me this example. About 100 years back, the cloth from the UK came to India because the cost of manufacturing the cloth in UK was much lesser than in India. That's the reason why there was flooding of Indian market with the cloth from UK. Now, the same thing will happen if you are an enterprise, and if the cost of doing work outside is lesser than within the work will go. It is difficult to stop it. So the only way to convince is that you be very efficient. There are limits to that. So subject to that, my view is that you must stick to all the strategic side and leave the more mundane part to the outsource partner. Okay, the next one. So what is your view on tablets dominating the smartphones? Which will emerge as winner? Should the enterprise invest on both types of mobile devices? See, short term, yes. Okay, long term, we have to see where all this will go. In fact, I'm looking at convergence in a very different way. The TV, as we see it today, may not exist the way it would about 10 years later. Surely, we are seeing convergence between TV and a computer. So those two are coming together. Now, when those two come together, there is no reason why a mobile can also be part of that. So TV, computer, mobile, they come together. Now, so then the question is how much? So because human beings are what they are, you will probably have both the flavors. You will have some people who will go the small screen real estate, the form factor as we call it, the small form factor of a phone, and some will prefer the larger form factor. See, having iPhone, Steve Jobs still launched iPad, right? That's because of the bigger form factor. It brings certain benefits. So I think in short term, there's no choice but to invest in both. I see that at my home. I also see that with my customers. So that would be my answer. Long term, we will have to see if the smartphones will actually converge in some way, and I see that with Samsung actually. The device is more than a mobile, it's less than a tablet, so some interesting form factors are coming out there. So we'll have to see if something like that happens and that becomes mainstream, then it's a different point. But short term, I think there's no choice. Okay, hi Shankar, great session, thanks. There is a bloody innovation, something which is absolutely new, maybe like the ATM, and the combined innovation enabling BFSI services through iPad mobile, right?
Hello. You're not audible. Suddenly your voice is gone.